Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of Business Networking with Vipul Bondal on Thinky Talks. I must begin by thanking all of you for being here every week, week after week, and saying hello and asking the questions to all the experts who come in and give us uh, their knowledge, share their knowledge with us, and also share their thoughts. Sometimes those thoughts are very new and very revolutionary in nature. But you've been a very patient audience. You've been good with your questions, and your questions have really made these interactions very very interesting and insightful for me as well. So I have a similar expert with me today. He is someone I've known very closely, very recently. Uh, he is a very good friend, and he is very good at what he does. You've seen the introduction that I put out. So he is what we call as a brand strategist and a communications expert, Nikhil Kothare. Just a quick introduction to Nikhil, so that you have a better idea of whom we are talking to. So this is biodata which he has shared with me and written by him. He says he is a motivated and result-oriented communications professional with over 25 years experience in creative communication domain. But if you take his wisdom together, I think it is more than 250 years of wisdom stored in there. His experience spans creating brands and conceptualizing to writing copy and content for various target audiences and mediums. He is also a professor, Professor Nikhil, whose forte lies in business communication, branding, advertising, and copywriting. He's a voracious reader. He has a personal library of, hold your breath, over 2,500 books. He says, writing is a passion I indulge in only for satisfaction. He's a strong player with ace leadership capabilities. His key to success is positive use of knowledge. Over the period of time, he's worked on several marquee clients. He's worked on Tata Sky, he's worked with Mahindra Rise, Bayer India, Hershey's, Mahindra and Mahindra, Tata Sky again, Viacom 18, Hard Rock Cafe. He is part of BNI International. He conducts advanced training modules on leadership skills, presentation skills, meeting skills, increasing business through referrals, and networking skills as a whole. He's one of the lead trainers in the BNI system, and he takes care of the brand for BNI India. So anything about the BNI brand, and our port of call is Nikhil Kothare. Welcome to the podcast, Nikhil. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you.
Thank you, Vipul, so much for having me over. And lovely introduction, like always. You don't need to read from the resume, anyways. You know more about me just like that.
Yeah, but I'll tell you honestly, when I read your resume, I realized I know so little about you from our interaction. There's a lot more to your personality than I actually know. So, well, over a period of time, we'll explore, and some of it we'll explore right now.
The parts that are not mentioned, you already know.
We'll leave that for another discussion. So, as you know, our theme today is about nurturing brands. But before we get to that topic, can you tell me how did you enter this field? I mean, that's something that's always interested me, and that's a standard question I ask all my guests. How did you come into this field? Because most of the people who come into this podcast are people who aren't traditionally from that. Their parents aren't from that field and so on. So, how did you come into this field, and what brought you here?
Um, okay, so if I have to start, uh, how I got into advertising in the first place. So,
That's
first thing you need to know about me is that I'm an artist. Okay, by you can say born artist in that category. So the only thing I know very well since childhood is how to hold a pencil, how to hold a brush. So that's where I come.
all
Uh,
right.
having after that, obviously, uh, being an artist, that was my forte, that was my liking, inclination, whatever. After my 10th standard, I directly went into art college. So that was the calling, anyways. So I got into art. Now, initially, I wanted to get into fine art. So fine art is something which is like, jada jada brush leke canvas paint karo. So that was my liking. That would have been my ideal choice any day. But then Papa बोला कि क्या करेगा झोली लटका के घूमेगा तू so better to sit in the office and create something which is going to earn you money also. So
Okay.
that's how I got pushed towards applied arts and advertising, and that's what I studied. I was in a great college, the best college in Bombay, which is Ellis Raheja. Back then, Ellis Raheja School of Art, or better known as Bandra School of Art House. So I graduated from there, moved into good agencies, one of the big ones, mid-sized ones. Uh, and then suddenly I realized that this whole culture of late nights and overnights is not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. वो 12 बजे ही चमकता है तारा, and then you get some bright spark. That's not me. I like my 9 to 5 kind of schedule. I need to sleep at a decent hour. I need to get up at a decent hour. So that's me. So from college, from school, uh, being passionate about art, to college, taking up converting that passion to commercial, or rather profession, and then moving on to what I did so far. So been more of a passion journey. I'm passionate about art. I'm passionate about my subject. I love it. I love branding. Brands are not something which I am fascinated with. We'll get to that later. But yeah, I'm fascinated with branding, not brand.
Okay,
So
great.
that's me. That's my journey in brand.
So, so we try and understand the distinction. So you're not interested in brands so much, but you're interested in branding. So, that will be something to very interesting to take you upon. So, from what I read on your bio sheet, you did advertising at a time when, it was very exciting to get into advertising. The 90s and the early 2000s was a great time to,
Yes.
be in advertising. And we also read some of the names that you work with are very exciting brands themselves. Mahindra Rise and Tata Sky and so on. So, just walk us through your advertising journey because let's try and understand, what kind of branding have you done? So that will kind of, give us the idea of what kind of work you worked on in the past. And obviously, I'm sure that's kind of reflected in what you do today.
Yeah. So for me, so like you said, the old school or the old times, the exciting times of branding, or rather advertising also. So I'm very fortunate, not from the current generation of so-called advertisers or branding people. I come from a time when artworks used to be made by hand. It's
Right.
something that and I know. Those
Yeah.
were the times when there were no computers, there were no fast deliveries. Artworks would take like days, and it used to
There
be
was
a
something called
work of
bromides, if you remember.
yes, bromides, transparencies, all those. So yeah, so I come from that era. I'm fortunate that I have seen that era and I've transitioned into the computer age. So my journey started from there. So my understanding or my passion is more with to do with handwork, and that is linked to your brain. So that's
Okay.
where I have come from. I've seen a lot of transition over the years where computers have taken over. Now AI is also taking over. uh, when it comes to brands that I've worked with, I've seen them also evolve. So traditionally, some companies have been like the traditional Indian mentality companies. They have transitioned. They have moved on to becoming international. The thought process has changed. It's evolved. It's evolved in a good way. Hopefully, they'll continue evolving in that sense, and the brands would be more receptive towards change also. But I think evolution has taught us everything that we know about advertising as well. So yeah, branding itself has also evolved in that sense.
So there's a very interesting question here from Aniket Rao. I'll take it in this context because that will kind of lead us to some of the other things that I want to ask you. So he's asking, can you explain the difference between brand building and brand nurturing? So
Ah,
Professor Nikhil, over to you. Uh,
but
if you can explain in short what it means.
in short, so In short
Okay.
answers, you will get short understanding. So if you really
Okay.
want to
All right.
know, if you really want me to tell you, then I'll
Well,
talk a
well,
little backstory.
you can give it the way you want.
So when we talk about brand building, okay, let's take it for brand building. So I would say brand building is all about something which is not existent or is in the nascent stage, and you build from ground up. Whereas brand nurturing is more about what you have grown, keep it growing. So that's nurturing. So building is one thing. You start something from scratch, or it is something that you're rebranding or reinventing. It's like replanting a seed, the same plant but a different, a different plantation. But nurturing is about how you're growing it, how you are helping it grow, reap the benefits, reap the fruit, all that. So there's a different approach to brand building. When you're building a brand, there is a different science required. When it is nurturing, it is different. So simply put, if I have to say, okay, you know what, brand building is like planting a tree. तो उसके लिए पानी अलग quantity में लगेगा, उसको nutrients अलग quantity में लगते हैं. But when it comes to nurturing, you need a whole different nutrient. It's not the same. There's a whole
Absolutely correct.
different amount of water that you need to give. So that's the difference.
Okay, I hope Aniket that has answered your question. In short, we will have more inputs from Nikhil as we go along. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more that we can unpack here. He's just giving us like a good brand, he's just showing us the small things, and then he'll ask us to reveal the big things. Okay, great. So, your role now has moved from advertising and branding as such to being brand strategist and advising. So, I mean, can you explain the subtle difference for us for common understanding?
I really like the word mentoring better.
Okay.
Strategists are
Mentoring.
somebody,
Okay.
yeah, strategists are somebody who put everything out on paper. Okay, I do that. Everything has to be on paper. Advisors, they just do advising. So I believe there is more to that role. Being in business has taught me a lot, that you need to be understanding, and you need to get into the entrepreneur's mindset and where they are coming from. So there is another side to that, and that's about knowing, understanding, and learning what the entrepreneur's business is all about. वो कैसे function करता है, कैसे करता है काम, what is his daily routine, how does he function? Now, when I get into the mentoring role, that's where the thinking actually starts, and that's what fancies me. So strategist से ज्यादा mentor अगर मैं बोलूँ अपने आप को, तो वो ज्यादा apt रहेगा. So my for me brand mentoring is more of a calling where I work with the entrepreneur from the day start, or from wherever he takes me on board, and I work with him on a strategy rather than me just working alone in my room and ye lo bhai karo abhi, this is my strategy
Uh,
for you. So there
so,
happens to be the difference.
so you're more the sleeves rolled up kind of person than somebody who just sits in an ivory tower and gives gyan.
Yeah,
Is that the way
वो नहीं
you
work
see it?
करता है
Okay.
short term में, वो
And
ज्ञान and all those things
yeah,
work very well for a short duration where you give gyan and I give you jargons. Oh, branding is this and that and that. But वो long term में नहीं hold करता.
yeah, I think the segment that you're looking for also kind of requires that, right? I mean, if you're working for large brands, they already have systems in place, they already have, the kind of wherewithal that is required to, put into practice what a brand strategist would give them, versus, somebody like you who actually uh, holds the hand of your client and says, okay, this is the way you nurture your brand. Would that be the right way of describing what it is?
Yeah, of course. I think that would be the right way. That would be apt as well. Nurturing is what actually any brand strategist should be doing. I'm no different. So I would say that I'm a nurturer. I do look at not just the uh, image part of a company, but the actual growth part of the company. So nurturing
And
is very
here
important.
you and here you are not agnostic. I mean, you are agnostic to any kind of thing. I mean, it's not necessarily only advertising or only digital, or you kind of for you, all of them are equally important tools to have, right?
Absolutely. I think for any brand or any branding strategy or be it marketing strategy, the core concept, the core message is very important. Now, how you deliver that message, it can be any medium. could be digital, offline, PR, events, whatever it takes. So idea is by naam hona chahiye. Now, if you have to walk any path, you have to walk the path and you have to get there. So I believe
So there's a
it's a whole package deal. It's not a one-off deal. Yeah.
great. Okay, so there's a very interesting question from Jenny Matthew here. The question is, what are some misconceptions about brand nurturing that you encounter? Some misconceptions about brand nurturing
The misconception.
that you have encountered.
Okay, the most funniest one. Misconception about brand nurturing that so a client needs to restructure himself and start from scratch and do away with everything that has been done so far. So that's one of the misconceptions that I've always heard that जो भी अब तक किया था सब crap है अभी नया कुछ करना पड़ेगा. No, that's something which is a complete misdiagnosis of the requirement. So it's like saying, अभी तक जितना भी nurturing किया था पेड़ को काटो और फिर से उगाओ. So that's one of the most hilarious things I hear.
In this context, I have a different sort of a question for you. Uh, how often do you recommend to a brand owner or a business owner about to re-audit or re-examine what they are doing about their brand? I mean, is there a process for it? I mean, this is something I've always wanted to know. So if that's a secret, I would like you to reveal the secret. I mean, how often do you revisit what you're doing as a brand owner?
Okay, as a brand owner, right? So if you're an
So, I mean,
entrepreneur,
as a brand mentor, I mean, I'm sure that's your job to kind of tell
yes,
them, okay, this is the right time to now let's revisit what we're doing. So, like for example, financial consultants, people who help you invest, so they'll tell you to do that once a year at least, or once in 2 years. If you're too busy. So, so do you have some sort of a standard procedure for doing this? Or,
I'm going to steal it from the financial advisors.
okay.
So ideally it should be done every 2 years. Every entrepreneur needs to sit back and say, okay, fine, you know what, I started this business with passion, and this is where I wanted to reach. And if they focus on sales, then they should focus on the brand image as well. Then whether the strategy is working, whether what they planned out or set out to do, is it working? It needs to be counted for. It should be accounted for, and it should be seen whether what I did made any kind of difference. Did it hit the nail? Did I achieve the why? So all these things need to be done on a regular basis. So ideally, you can't do it once a year because brand building is a longer process. It takes time unless
Right.
you have a lot of money, but it takes time usually. So once in 2 years, once every 4 years or 3 years or 4 years, you should be revisiting your why or your brand strategy or whatever you've been nurturing and you've been building. You need to see whether really did it get you anything, any kind of activity for that matter. See, even marketing for that, for instance, you take a yearly call, right? You
Yeah.
revisit your plan, see whether there was any ROI. Same needs to be done with your brand. Now, why is it so different? Why should it be any different?
So once in 2 years is an average
Yeah.
time frame
Fair
that
enough.
you
Fair enough.
recommend. So even with things changing so fast with technology coming in, AI coming in and changing things, virtual reality and all of those things, changing the way we experience brand, or at least the front-facing part of the brand, that we experience. All of that is changing big time, and in that context, also, do you recommend a similar time frame? Or I mean, what is your game plan when it comes to uh, countering or working together with technology? I mean, how do you look at this?
See, it's like this. Everything, every technology, every medium that has been invented post 90s or the 2000s. Uh, how are we using it? Is it as a tool or as a think tank? If our thought starts कि अच्छा ये टेक्नोलॉजी है और इसको मुझे यूज करना ही है कैसे भी करके because it is the latest thing, then you got it wrong. It's not going to work for you, no matter how good the technology. But if you see that, okay, my business or my brand requires a certain kind of technological support, and this is the latest thing that could help me achieve that target or achieve that objective, then yes, then the technology is worth it. टेक्नोलॉजी इन इटसेल्फ इज नॉट नेवर बैड, राइट? बट उसको इस्तेमाल करने के वाले के पास इंटेलिजेंस है कि नहीं, वो ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. तो आई थिंक एआई इज अ ब्रिलियंट थिंग, बट उसके पीछे भी अगर इंटेलिजेंस हो तो दैट विल वर्क बेटर.
So do you use AI tools in your business? I mean,
That is so not for my business. No, not for my business. See, if I have to use, I'll use natural intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. But if the artificial intelligence is of use to my client or his brand, then yeah, definitely I'll use. No two ways about. So every media, even for that matter, even digital media is not necessarily uh, working for every business. It will work for some businesses. It might work for major of the businesses, but not for all. But if you say
right.
that, oh, you have to do digital media or digital marketing simply because it is the in thing, then that's the wrong way to go about it, and that's stupid.
Uh, in this context of digital and in this context of AI dominated discourse, if I may use the word, how do you see the entire process of brand building or brand nurturing changing? And I mean, has have things remained? Some of the things that will remain the same. I mean, we obviously know a lot of things have changed, but what has remained the same in your view? And what are the common things that from let's say the early 2000s to now? What is it that has remained common in brand building in your
I don't find anything
field?
common. I don't find anything remaining the same. It has evolved downright to the thinking process itself. The approach has changed. I think when we talk about brand building or brand nurturing, the one thing that I always ask my clients is why. Why do you want to become a brand? Why do you want to reach wherever you want to reach? So the why has changed over the years, and hence everything that is associated with branding, whether it is nurturing or it is building or whatever, restructuring, architecture, everything has changed simply because the why keeps changing. So if I speak to a client who was there 10 years back and I speak to him today, the why has changed. Why is the requirement for becoming a brand present? Do you want to become a brand in the first place? So that keeps changing, and so long as that why keeps changing, there is no fixed way of being for branding. It has to keep evolving. And as strategist, I mean, you're a strategist yourself, so I know how you also think, and you know it, and I know it that we need to keep evolving with whatever the why is.
Yeah, but I think one thing that, I mean, Nikhil, correct me if I'm wrong. One thing that has remained constant is the fact that you got to be authentic. And as a brand, you got to be authentic about, who you are, what you mean to your customer, if I may use the word. And I'm using the word customer here for a large set of people. And, I think, and you'll agree with me, and I know you will, that remaining authentic to your customer is key to brand building. I mean, do you think that has changed at all? I mean,
It does
it's
change.
always good to have a counter
It's there,
view.
it's needed. See, you know it, I know it. It's authenticity, being authentic, being ethical. All these things are needed for every brand to be looked up to. But ultimately, क्या होता है? The moment an entrepreneur starts thinking about the bottom line and sales and getting that hitting that target, ये थोड़ा
Right.
बहुत neglect हो ही जाता है. And then we are called in then to cover up the problems.
Okay,
So
so
that
here
is
I have
that is a normal thing. A normal thing.
a very interesting question from Brian DeMello. Okay, since we are on the topic of authenticity, I just thought I'll take this question from Brian. So his question is, what strategies can brands use to stay authentic while nurturing their brand?
First of all, you need to be sure that the company that you're working with, your client is authentic. Are they really delivering that promise? No matter how much you frame up, you can come up with the best vision statement, mission statement, run a whole campaign telling people how authentic the company is. But ultimately, agar the company is not authentic and you're just trying to cover up a lie, it's all going to blow up in your face. So you can use a lot of tools, you can use a lot of mediums, you can use an entire advertising campaign to deliver this message that how authentic the company is. All that is fair, but hona chahiye, actual hona chahiye. We say that in advertising everything is an exaggerated lie, but then or exaggerated truth, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
But the fact remains that there has to be truth.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
there are tools. There are many tools. We can just go on and on about how to strategize around a messaging and putting it forward in the front of the target audience and all that. वो सब हो सकता है. There are many tools to do that.
we're going to do that now, Nikhil, because there is another cap that you wear, which is called Professor Nikhil. So, we'll ask Professor Nikhil for some of those tools that you teach in the classroom. So, what is this thing about Professor Nikhil? I mean, that is something I didn't know about you, I must admit. So, I didn't know you were Professor Nikhil. So, can you just tell me which part of your personality, what is it that you do, uh, you know, to be Professor Nikhil?
It's just simple. I mean, there's no big secret about it or something. I just love teaching. So I just love to teach. So if you have knowledge, वो अगर you read my key to success. It's always knowledge. So if you have knowledge and you don't have anybody to pass it on to, it's waste. So before I move on, I need to pass on as much as I can. So that's where the whole thing has come from. And the best way to do that is teach. And students are the best. I mean, it's like that clay that you can mold, and that feeling of molding and creating something, just pointing them out to the right way. It's fascinating, and it's exhilarating for me. So that's the reason why I do it. So I teach three subjects, but I get full uh, satisfaction doing it.
If you can tell us a little more about what are the subjects you teach and
So
where do you teach them? Just
yeah, I do
because
teach.
some of our people of the community might want to join those institutes where you teach because they just want to hear you more.
So I do teach. So I teach business communication. That's one of the subjects that I love. The other one is of course branding, and the third one is very very dear to me, which is copyright. So copywriting for communication industry is what I teach. So those are the three things that I teach, and I teach it at different levels, different standards, and so that's how I do it.
So there's another aspect of you. I mean, there are so many aspects, but one aspect of you is the whole thing that you're a networker, and that's why you're here. I mean, more than anything else. You're
I
here
thought
because you're a
I thought I'm here because you love me.
that too, but more importantly, because this community and this podcast is all about network. So, you've been in BNI now for several years. You not only are a networker, you also are part of the regional team where you are a trainer. You've been supporting chapters before. You now teach a whole host of things as a trainer. So, can you tell me what is networking for you? How has it helped you? And, walk us through your journey as a networker.
So I believe in the core philosophy of the organization. It's very simple and it's very beautiful. So the more you want, the more you need to give. So I believe that the more you give out, and so in my case, I give out in the sense of knowledge. I share the knowledge. I share the experience. So the more I do that, the more I get in return. And that's what I like about the platform. And then that's the reason why I'm there on the regional team also. No denying, people know you for what you do, and there's a certain amount of image that gets created. There's a certain amount of respect also that you earn, and that's very difficult. So I like that. I like doing that. I like training over there also, simply because it gives me a chance to speak with people, interact with people, gain experience from them, and then share it with the next batch. So I love doing that. That's the reason why I'm on the regional team. Of course, visibility doesn't hurt. People know you, so that's a good thing. That's a good feeling.
And then you get to meet good people like me.
Oh yeah, the added bonus.
And yeah, I mean, and that's give us gain. I mean, I gain a friend like you by knowing you. Yeah, but I think on a more serious note, I mean, has it contributed to business? Because there's the first question a lot of people who are interested in networking ask. All this is
It,
fine, but will I get business? And will I?
so yeah, of course it does. I'm part of the organization for what, 12 years now. I've been on the regional team for close to about 7 years, 7 8 years now. So Definitely. If I'm there, I'm not stupid to be there just because it satisfies my ego or something. I'm there because it is benefiting me. Business wise, also, it's definitely there. I'm benefiting from that. So you do get business. More than that, more than business, you get experience, you get knowledge, you get friends. Of course, all of those things are there. But yeah, business does happen, and that's very important. I think it's very important. Otherwise, it's just a social club, and this is not a place to be a time to be in a social. For retirement के बाद भी होता
So, going ahead, I mean, how do you see brands evolving? You already seen a lot of change over the last 25 years. But how do you see it going further? Because things are changing more rapidly today than, let's say, 25 years. 25 years ago, if you establish a brand, you can be sure for the next 10 years, you don't need to kind of look at it. You probably established it well, and then, at least one generation you've taken care of. But today, that's not the case. You need to keep nurturing, if I may use the word. So, how do you see the future of brand nurturing? It's good business for all of us, but how do you see that out?
See, unfortunately, bearer of bad news, but the way I see it is till the time there needs to be a lot of education. Okay, first of all, we need to educate the entrepreneurs, we need to educate our clients as to what is the right way and what is not going to be beneficial. Unfortunately, right now, the way I see things, the way I see brands, the so-called brands coming up and dominating the scene or creating this kind of whole image in the market, it's very, very superficial. There's no substance to them. They might have some great looking brand identity. There might be some great looking one-off ads, one-off ideas, but there is a sustainability problem. I don't see them being sustainable. Most of like the earlier question that I think Ryan asked, right, about authenticity and being authentic.
Right.
That's probably lacking right now. Most of the brands that are there in the market, I don't know whether they'll be there for the next forget 25 years, even for 5 years. So it's like IRM, VIRM, you don't know whether they'll stick around, and there's no dependability over it. And
So
that's
in
something that
so
that's something
in this context, how do we advise our clients? Because
be truthful, be honest. You need to they need you are the sounding board. I mean, come on, you are the sounding board. You're the mirror. You tell them, boss, whatever you're doing is wrong. You can't keep saying Hanji, Sarji, whatever you say, Sarji. You can't keep doing that. And that's the problem. See, you asked me what the difference between 20 years back and now. I think we were more open and upfront to our clients saying that, no, boss, you're wrong. Now, the client is always right. And that's stupid. You need to tell them, boss, you're going wrong. Just because the person is paying you, you can't just bend over. And that's exactly what is wrong. And when you ask me about 25 years के बाद क्या होने वाला है, nurturing के बाद क्या होने वाला है, I don't know. I'd probably be planting real trees there at that time, not planting brands.
this is the version of the Nikhil that I wanted to see. The fire brand, so far you were very uh,
Very
subdued, I
controlling.
must say.
I was trying to be controlling.
Yeah.
I was trying to
So,
control the situation. It had to come out.
but on a more serious note, I mean, how do you manage to play so many roles? I mean, one is, of course, uh, your role in E&I and all of that
Hmm.
that you there. Your role as a brand nurturer, your role as a professor, and then you have these thousands of books that you read. I mean, how do you find the time here? I mean, what is it that you do?
I honestly don't think too much about it. I do what I want to do at that particular time. ये multitasking का जो word है is just a big word. It's just another word to use to prove to somebody that I can do so much. Just about showing off. वो मेरे से नहीं होता. So I don't think I'm juggling anything. I'm just taking it one day or 1 hour at a time. So right now I need to do something in this particular thing. I'm there and I do that only. So what I'm talking about when I'm talking about I can't do multiple things at a time. It's mentally and physically not possible for me. So I do those things only, one thing at a time, finish it, move on to the next one. So, and of course, book reading, why you can tell me to, stand in queue and I read. I'm that kind of a person. So book reading is not in any part of or limitation as far as I'm concerned. I can be sitting in a lobby waiting for a client meeting and I'll read.
So
So
do you have
book
a book
reading
with
is
you all
good.
the time? Do you carry a book with you all the
Oh
time?
yes, yes, yes. I always have a book with me or two, depend. मेरा mood के ऊपर. And I always carry two different genres. So one has to be something to lighten my mood, and one has to make me think.
Wait, Nikhil, thanks a lot for your time. I know you keep a very, very busy schedule. I know you made it sound very simple, but I know
Not a,
that you really made the time for this. So thanks a
my
lot,
pleasure. Thank you. Thank you
and
for having
I really appreciate you taking the time to come over and answering all our questions patiently and to the best extent you can without losing your cool. So that was the good part. So although I tried to provoke you a bit, but you didn't get provoked. Kudos to you. So
me. No, we
thanks
practice
for
on that.
listening and
Thank you.
have a
Thank
great
you.
day ahead. Thank you very
You
much.
too. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening.